Rain fell like shattered glass on the empty streets of Portland that night. Neon lights bled through the fog, painting the puddles gold and red. Most people had already hurried home. All except one little boy, maybe 7, standing under a flickering street lamp, clutching a small paper bag and a jacket far too big for him. His sneakers were soaked, his nose pink from the cold, but he didn't seem to care. He was waiting. A few feet away on the rusted bench at the bus stop sat a man. Unshaven, tired, his clothes worn and wet. The kind of man people pass by without noticing. A small paper cup sat near his feet, half filled with rainwater instead of coins. He looked up only when the boy sneezed. "You shouldn't be out here, kid," the man said, voice rough, like it had been years since he'd used it gently. The boy sniffled, looking up at him with wide blue eyes. "I missed the last bus. My mom's at work." The man nodded, pulling his thin jacket tighter. "Tough luck. These nights get cold." The boy hesitated, then reached into his paper bag and pulled out a slightly squished sandwich wrapped in foil. "You can have this. Mom says sharing makes bad days better." The man stared at the sandwich, then at the boy. Something in his face, a mix of confusion and guilt, flickered. "You shouldn't. It's okay," the boy interrupted. "I already had one." He smiled faintly, pushing it toward him. The man took it slowly, like it might vanish if he moved too fast. He hadn't eaten all day. "Thanks, kid." The boy nodded, shivering. He rubbed his arms, his teeth chattering as another gust of wind swept through the street. The man noticed his small body trembling under the soaked t-shirt. Without thinking, he said, "Put your jacket on, kid." The boy looked down at the one he was wearing. Faded red with missing buttons, barely thick enough for the cold. Then he looked at the man's thin shirt, rain dripping down his neck. Slowly, he slipped off his jacket and held it out. "You need it more." The man froze. "Don't be crazy. You'll get sick." The boy just shrugged. "My mom says kindness makes you warm inside." The man didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His throat burned as he took the jacket, hands shaking slightly. It smelled faintly of soap and crayons, the smell of childhood, of innocence, of a life he hadn't had in years. He swallowed hard, blinking back something sharp behind his eyes. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Eli," the boy said, hugging himself. "What's yours?" The man hesitated. He hadn't said his real name in so long it felt foreign. "Jack." Eli smiled. "Nice to meet you, Jack." The man nodded, studying the boy's face. The same light hair, the same dimple when he smiled. Something tugged at the back of his mind, something buried deep. "Does your mom know you're out here?" "She's working late. I go to Mrs. Harper's after school, but she fell asleep early. So I waited here. Mom always gets off the 10 p.m. bus." Jack's heart sank. "You walk home alone?" Eli nodded simply. "It's not far." Jack exhaled, shaking his head. The city wasn't kind to kids alone at night. "You shouldn't do that. It's not safe." The boy smiled again, unbothered. "You sound like my dad. He used to say that too." Jack's chest tightened. "Used to? What happened to him?" he asked softly. The boy's expression dimmed. "He left. Mom said he went to fix himself." "I don't know what that means." Jack froze. For a second, the world went quiet. The rain, the traffic, even his own heartbeat. His mind raced. The name Eli, the age, the neighborhood, the timeline. He looked closer at the boy, the shape of his chin, the eyes that mirrored his own. The air seemed to drain from his lungs as a terrible, impossible realization began to form. "Your mom," he said slowly, voice trembling. "What's her name?" Eli smiled faintly. "Sarah Parker." The sandwich nearly slipped from Jack's hand. His pulse thundered in his ears. He turned away quickly, pretending to cough, but his eyes burned. Sarah. His Sarah. And the boy standing beside him, the boy who'd just given him his only jacket, wasn't just a kind stranger. He was his son. Jack's fingers clenched around the small red jacket. His throat ached as the past he'd buried crashed through him all at once. The mistakes, the drinking, the fight that drove Sarah away. The night he'd promised he'd come back a better man and never did. Now, years later, his son had found him, not as a father, but as a stranger in the rain. Jack swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. "You should head home, Eli. Your mom's probably worried sick." Eli nodded, smiling. "Thanks, Jack. You should stay under the light. It's warmer there." Jack forced a smile, watching the boy run down the street toward the corner diner, the red glow of the sign reflecting off his damp hair. When Eli turned the corner, Jack sank onto the bench, clutching the small jacket to his chest. His breath hitched, and for the first time in years he let himself cry. The son he'd lost had just saved him from the cold. And as the rain fell harder, Jack whispered into the storm, "I'll fix this. I swear. I'll find my way home." Jack didn't sleep that night. He sat beneath the same flickering streetlight long after the rain stopped, Eli's small red jacket still clutched to his chest. He could still feel the warmth of the boy's kindness in it, and the crushing weight of what it meant. His son. The son he'd never met, who'd grown up believing his father was just someone who went away to fix himself. By dawn, the streets of Portland began to stir. Buses roared to life, cafes opened their doors, and the world moved on, unaware that a man had just stumbled into his own past. Jack's fingers traced the faded threads of the jacket one last time before he stood, dizzy with guilt and hope. He knew what he had to do. He had to find Sarah. The last time he'd seen her was 5 years ago, her voice breaking, her tears falling as she said the words he'd never forget. "You're not the man I fell in love with, Jack. And until you find him again, don't come back." He had walked out that night and never looked over his shoulder. Not once. Not when he hit rock bottom. Not even when the shelters stopped taking him. But now everything inside him screamed to turn around, to undo what he'd done, to be something his son could be proud of. The first bus of the morning hissed to a stop in front of him. Jack climbed aboard, his pockets empty except for a few crumpled bills. As he sat down, the driver, an older woman with kind eyes, glanced at the jacket he carried. "Nice color," she said softly. "Looks like it belongs to someone who cares about you." Jack smiled weakly. "Yeah, he doesn't know it yet, but he does." The bus wound through the waking city, past familiar corners and faded memories. Every street seemed to whisper something from the past. Laughter from a life he'd thrown away, warmth from a home he'd walked out of. When he finally got off near Maplewood Avenue, his heart began to pound. The diner on the corner, Sarah's Diner, still stood there. The paint was newer, the windows cleaner, but it was the same place. He had helped her paint the first sign years ago when they were both young and broke, dreaming of a better life. He stepped inside, the bell above the door chiming softly. The smell of coffee and cinnamon hit him like a memory he wasn't ready for. Behind the counter stood Sarah. She looked older now, but beautiful in the way strength becomes beauty. Her hair was tied back, her apron dusted with flour, and her eyes, those same soft green eyes, were focused on the morning rush. She didn't notice him at first. Jack froze. His breath caught in his throat. For a moment he couldn't move. He wanted to run. He wanted to speak. He wanted to disappear. Then she turned. The moment their eyes met, time stopped. "Jack!" Her voice cracked slightly, disbelief and anger tangled in it. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The diner went quiet, the sound of dishes fading into the background. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" Her tone wasn't sharp. It was tired, like someone who'd already used up all their anger long ago. "I didn't plan it, I swear. I just ran into Eli last night." At that, her eyes widened, and every muscle in her body went still. "You what?" Jack swallowed hard, stepping forward. "He was waiting for your bus. It was raining. He gave me his jacket. I didn't even know." "Sarah." I didn't even know it was him until he said your name." Her lips parted slightly, 1,000 emotions flickering across her face. Fear, shock, disbelief, pain. "You shouldn't have. I didn't mean to. I didn't want to scare him." He placed the small red jacket on the counter between them. "I just wanted to return this." She stared at it for a long time, her hands trembling slightly. Then she whispered, "You should have stayed gone, Jack. You don't know how hard it was." He nodded slowly. "You're right. I don't. But I know how hard it's been without him." Her eyes flicked up to his. "You lost that right a long time ago." Jack's voice broke. "I didn't come here to take anything. I just wanted to see him one more time. That's all." Sarah took a step back, crossing her arms. "You don't understand what seeing you could do to him. He thinks you're a good man. He needs to believe that. Don't take that away from him." Jack hesitated, pain flashing across his face. "I want to be that man, Sarah. I know I can't undo what I did, but I can try to be better. For him." Her expression softened just slightly, a tiny fracture in her wall. She looked at the jacket again, running her fingers over the worn fabric. "He still sleeps with this next to his bed," she whispered. "Says it smells like safety." Jack swallowed hard. "He said something last night. He told me you said kindness makes you warm inside." That made her smile faintly, tears glimmering in her eyes. "He's always been like that. Too kind for this world." Jack took a shaky breath. "Please, Sarah. I won't cause trouble. I just want to be around. Even if it's from a distance. I'll take any job, any shift. I'll mop floors, clean dishes, anything. Just to stay close." Sarah looked at him for a long moment, her heart fighting her head. Finally, she sighed. "There's a dishwasher position open. It's minimum wage, long hours, and the pipes leak. Think you can handle that?" Jack nodded immediately. "I can handle anything." She looked down, shaking her head with a small, tired smile. "You always said that." And just like that, the man who had once walked out of his family's life was back. Not as a husband, not yet as a father, but as a man standing behind a counter, washing dishes for the woman he once broke. But as he watched her work, watched the way she smiled when Eli ran in after school later that day, Jack felt something he hadn't felt in years, the faint warmth of belonging. He didn't know if forgiveness was possible, but he was willing to earn it one plate, 1 hour, one small act at a time. And every time Eli laughed, every time Sarah smiled without realizing he was looking, Jack knew one thing for certain. Sometimes redemption doesn't come through grand gestures. Sometimes it starts with a little boy's jacket, and the hope that someone might still let you come home. Days turned into weeks, and for the first time in years, Jack had something close to routine. Something that felt almost like peace. Every morning, he arrived at Sarah's diner before sunrise, the sky still gray and sleepy. He scrubbed pots, cleaned floors, fixed leaky pipes, and stayed quiet while the breakfast rush rolled in. Most customers didn't even notice him, but Jack didn't mind. For once, invisibility felt like grace, a quiet chance to exist near the two people who meant everything to him. From the kitchen doorway, he often caught glimpses of Eli sitting at the counter after school, sipping hot chocolate and doing his homework while Sarah worked. Jack watched from a distance, a ghost just beyond the warmth of their world. But every now and then, Eli would glance back and smile, waving his small hand. "Hi, Jack," he'd say. And every time, Jack's throat tightened as he waved back. "Hey, buddy." Sarah pretended not to notice the small exchanges at first, but she did. Every smile between them chipped away at her guard a little more. She had sworn she'd never let Jack back in, that he'd had his chance and thrown it away. But seeing him there, day after day, quietly working without complaint, she began to see something different. This wasn't the man who'd left. This was a man who'd been broken and had chosen to build himself back piece by piece. One evening, after closing, Sarah walked into the kitchen to find Jack still there, wiping down the counters. "You don't have to stay this late," she said softly. Jack looked up, startled. "Just want to make sure everything's clean. You shouldn't have to do it alone." She folded her arms. "You always say that." He smiled faintly. "Guess I'm trying to prove it." Sarah hesitated, then leaned against the doorframe. "Eli likes you, you know. Keeps talking about how his friend Jack always smiles, even when he's tired." Jack's face softened. "He's a good kid. Strong. Kind. Got that from you." She didn't reply right away. The silence stretched between them. Not angry this time, just heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, she asked quietly, "What made you leave back then, Jack?" "The truth, not the excuses." He set down the towel and took a deep breath. "I was scared. Not of you, not even of being a father, but of failing again. My dad used to call me a mistake every time he drank. And when I started seeing pieces of him in myself, I thought walking away was the only way to stop the cycle." Sarah's eyes glistened. "And you thought leaving us was protecting us?" He nodded slowly. "Stupid, I know. I told myself I'd come back when I was better. But better took longer than I thought." Sarah looked down at the floor, her voice trembling. "You could have just called." "I wanted to," he whispered, 1,000 times. But shame's a louder voice than love sometimes. They stood there for a moment, the low hum of the refrigerator filling the quiet. Then Sarah said softly, "You're not that man anymore, are you?" Jack shook his head. "I'm trying not to be." She gave him a small, tired smile. "Then maybe it's time you stopped hiding in the kitchen." The next afternoon, when Eli came into the diner, Sarah called out from behind the counter, "Eli, guess who's eating with us today?" Eli looked up, surprised. "Who?" Before Jack could react, Sarah waved him out of the kitchen. "You!" Jack froze, wiping his hands nervously on his apron. "Me? Sit down," Sarah said gently. "You've earned a meal you don't have to wash dishes for." Eli grinned. "Sit next to me." Jack laughed awkwardly but obeyed, sliding into the booth beside his son. The boy's excitement filled the space, chattering about school and his favorite songs, while Sarah set down 3 plates of pancakes. For a moment it was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like home. Jack watched Eli devour his food, syrup smeared across his cheek. He laughed softly. "Slow down, champ." Eli giggled, mouth full. "You sound like Mom." Sarah looked at Jack, smiling faintly. He really does. That tiny, unguarded moment, the way they all laughed together, felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. Later that night, when Eli had gone to bed and the diner was dark, Sarah locked the door and turned to Jack. "I don't know where this goes," she admitted. "I'm not promising anything, but I can see that you're trying. That means something." Jack's voice cracked. "That's all I need. A chance to keep trying." She nodded, her expression soft but cautious. "Then don't disappear again." "I won't," he said. "Not this time." As he walked home under the soft streetlights, Jack passed the same bench where he'd met Eli weeks earlier. The rain had stopped, but the sound of water dripping from rooftops filled the air. He looked down at his hands, rough, worn, tired, but for the first time in years they felt useful. He wasn't just the man who'd left anymore. He was the man who'd stayed. And somewhere deep inside, he knew this story wasn't about redemption alone. It was about rebuilding something that had never truly been lost. Spring came slowly that year, bringing with it the kind of gentle warmth that makes people linger outside just a little longer. For Jack, Each morning at Sarah's diner felt like a gift he hadn't earned but refused to waste. He fixed squeaky doors, helped customers carry their bags, even stayed late to repaint the sign he once helped her hang a lifetime ago. Sarah noticed. She didn't say it out loud, but every time she saw him teaching Eli how to wipe down tables or helping an elderly customer cross the street, she smiled quietly to herself. The walls around her heart, once made of steel, were beginning to soften, not because of words, but because of consistency. Jack wasn't the man who promised change anymore. He was the man who showed it. But despite the growing peace, a strange tension lingered in the background. A fear that one mistake could ruin everything again. Jack carried that fear like a shadow. One rainy Thursday afternoon, Eli came running into the diner after school, drenched and grinning ear to ear. "Mom!" "Jack, guess what?" Sarah laughed, handing him a towel. "What, honey?" "I got picked for the Father's Day concert," Eli said proudly. "I get to sing the closing song, but we're supposed to bring our dads on stage at the end." Sarah's hand froze halfway through drying his hair. Jack's chest tightened. The silence that followed was heavy, awkward, and filled with 100 things unsaid. Eli looked between them, confused. "What's wrong?" Sarah swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. We'll figure something out." But Jack could see the flicker in her eyes, the old wound reopening. He stepped back, his voice low. "I don't want to make things complicated. I'll stay out of the way." Sarah looked at him, torn. "That's not fair to him. Or to you." He shook his head. "It's fair to the truth." That night, long after closing, Jack sat alone in the empty diner, the hum of the refrigerator his only company. He reached into his bag and pulled out the small red jacket, the same one Eli had given him weeks ago. It was still damp from the rain that night, still soft where the boy's small hands had folded it. He laid it on the counter and stared at it for a long time. Then, with trembling hands, he reached into his pocket, took out a piece of paper, and began to write. "Dear Eli, I don't know if I'll ever be the kind of man you deserve. I've made more mistakes than I can count, and for too long, I let them define me. But when you gave me this jacket, something changed. You didn't know who I was, not really, and still you chose kindness. You gave warmth to a man who'd forgotten what it felt like to be cared for. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you or your mom. I left because I didn't love myself enough to believe I could do better. But I've been trying every day since the night I met you again. If I can't stand next to you on that stage, I want you to know I'll still be there, listening, cheering, and thanking God for the boy who saved me without even knowing it. Your dad always, Jack." He folded the letter and tucked it inside the jacket pocket. Then he slipped the jacket back into the storage closet, where Sarah often kept lost items. It was his way of saying goodbye without saying it. But fate, or maybe something more merciful, had other plans. The next morning, when Sarah came in early, she found the jacket on the counter. She frowned, picking it up, and felt the note crinkle inside. She hesitated before opening it, but when she did, her eyes filled instantly with tears. By the time Jack arrived for his shift, she was waiting for him near the back door. "You were just going to leave this?" she asked quietly, holding the letter. Jack froze. "You found it?" "Yes," she said, her voice trembling. "And you were just going to disappear again?" He looked down. "I thought it was better that way. I don't want to confuse him. He deserves stability." Sarah stepped closer. "He deserves the truth." Jack looked up, his voice breaking. "The truth is, I'm terrified. I want to be there for him, but I don't want to hurt him again." She exhaled slowly. "You already are there for him, Jack. Every day you show up. Every day you keep your promises. That's more than most fathers ever do." He blinked, his throat tightening. You really believe that? I do, she said softly. And I think he does too. That afternoon, when Eli got home from school, Sarah handed him the red jacket. I think you forgot something, she said, hiding the folded letter in her palm. Eli slipped it on, his small hands patting the pockets, and then he froze. Mom! There's something inside. He pulled out the note, eyes widening at the handwriting. Sarah knelt beside him as he began to read silently. His lips moved slightly, his face changing. Confusion, surprise, and finally tears. When he finished, he looked up at her. It's from Jack, isn't it? Sarah nodded. Yes, baby. It is. Eli wiped his eyes. Then he's my dad? She swallowed hard. Yes, sweetheart. He is. Eli stood still for a long moment, then smiled through his tears. Can I still sing for him? Sarah hugged him tightly. I think he'd like nothing more. And in that moment, as she held her son close, Sarah realized something she hadn't let herself believe in years. Maybe forgiveness wasn't a single moment. Maybe it was a song sung softly, one verse at a time. The night of the Father's Day concert arrived like a memory trying to rewrite itself. The school auditorium glowed with warm lights, rows of proud parents filling every seat. Children in neat little outfits fidgeted nervously on stage, clutching sheet music and glancing toward the crowd. In the back row, Jack stood hidden near the doors, his cap pulled low. He hadn't planned to come. After Sarah found his letter, he'd almost packed up and left Portland for good. But something in her voice that morning had stopped him. A simple message she'd left on his phone. If you still want to be his father, show up tonight. So he did. Now, standing behind the last row of chairs, hands trembling, Jack watched the stage through misty eyes. Sarah sat near the front, her hair pinned up, her posture proud yet nervous. Eli sat with his class, his little bow tie slightly crooked, his red jacket folded neatly on the chair beside him. When the curtains opened, applause filled the air. Group after group sang cheerful songs about families and friendship. Jack clapped quietly, though his heart beat too fast for the rhythm. Then came the final performance, Eli's. The lights dimmed. The teacher spoke softly into the microphone. This next song is called The One Who Stayed in My Heart, written by Eli Parker. A hush swept over the crowd. Jack froze. He wrote it. Eli walked to the piano, his feet barely reaching the pedals. His voice, soft and unsure at first, rose through the silence like something fragile yet unbreakable. When the nights got cold, I dreamed of your face. When the stars were gone, I missed your embrace. You were lost, but I never let go. 'Cause love still remembers. It always knows. As he sang, Sarah's hands covered her mouth, tears slipping down her cheeks. Jack gripped the doorframe, his eyes burning. You left your jacket to keep me warm. I left my heart in your open arms. The kindness is home. Then I found the way. 'Cause love comes back, even when it strays. Halfway through the song, Eli looked up. Not at his mother, but at the back of the room. His gaze found Jack instantly. Their eyes met. Eli smiled. Jack's heart cracked open. He took a hesitant step forward, unsure if he was allowed, if he belonged there. But before he could move, Eli spoke softly into the microphone, his small voice echoing across the hall. This song is for my dad. The audience gasped. Sarah turned around, her tearful eyes meeting Jack's. She didn't look angry or afraid this time. She simply nodded. That was all he needed. Jack walked slowly down the aisle, his footsteps echoing in the quiet. Parents turned, whispering. Some recognized him, the man who washed dishes at the diner, the one who always smiled at their kids after school. Eli stood at the edge of the stage, his hands shaking. Jack reached him, unsure what to say. Then the boy whispered, "You came." Jack's voice trembled. "You asked me to." Eli smiled, wiping his cheek. "Can you finish the song with me?" Jack hesitated, glancing at Sarah. She nodded again, whispering, "Go." Jack climbed the few steps to the stage. The piano gleamed under the soft light. Eli patted the bench beside him and Jack sat, the same way he once had with his own father long ago, the same way he'd dreamed of doing with his son. Together they played. The melody filled the hall, uneven, imperfect, but real. The crowd fell silent, many wiping tears. You were lost and I was too, but somehow the road still led to you. The jacket, the rain, the second chance. The love we forgot learned how to dance. As the final note faded, Eli leaned against his father, whispering, "You stayed this time." Jack's eyes glistened as he wrapped an arm around his son. "Yeah," he said softly, "and I'm never leaving again." The crowd erupted in applause, not loud and wild, but long, steady, heartfelt. Sarah stood, clapping through her tears. For the first time in a decade, her heart wasn't heavy. It was full. After the concert, the three of them stood together under the soft drizzle outside the school. Eli ran ahead, splashing in puddles, humming the melody. Sarah turned to Jack, her expression tired but gentle. "You kept your promise," she said quietly. Jack nodded, voice rough. "Took me a while to learn what it meant." She looked at him for a long moment, then reached out and placed her hand over his. Tentative, fragile, but real. "Don't make him wait for spring again." He smiled faintly. "I won't." Eli came running up, his red jacket draped over his shoulders. "Dad, can we go for pancakes?" Jack laughed, a sound that felt like forgiveness. "Yeah, buddy. Let's go home." The three of them walked down the street together, the city lights glowing like old memories reborn. The red jacket swayed between them, small and bright against the gray night. The same jacket that had once been an act of kindness, now a symbol of everything they'd rebuilt. And as they disappeared around the corner, the rain finally stopped, as if the sky itself had decided that some stories really do deserve a second ending.